The morning light spills through the curtains. Soft and golden, it brushes across the room like a whisper. You stretch, slow and careful, feeling the familiar pull in your shoulders. It's gentle, but it's there, that quiet reminder of time. You used to move without thinking. Reach, lift, hug, all effortless. But somewhere between the years and the memories, stiffness arrived. It came quietly, like dust settling on old furniture. Now even small movements feel heavier. You roll your shoulders once, then twice. The sound of a breath fills the silence. You wonder, when did simple motion become such a task? And yet, there's something peaceful in slowing down. Something kind in listening to your body's quiet voice. You close your eyes and let the air move through you. A deep inhale. A long, soft exhale. Your shoulders begin to melt, just a little. The tension loosens its grip, making room for calm. And in that stillness, you realize it's not too late to move again. Not fast. Not hard. Just slow. Gentle. Enough to remind your shoulders they can still dance with ease. Margaret used to start her mornings in the garden. The air was cool, the sky soft with the first blush of sunrise. She loved the quiet rhythm of watering her plants, feeling the soil breathe. Each leaf seemed to whisper gratitude as she passed. But lately, her body had begun to speak louder than the garden. A small ache in her shoulder, a twinge when she reached too far. At first, she brushed it off, as everyone does. A little stiffness, she thought, just another part of getting older. But then came the mornings when she hesitated to lift the watering can. The ache turned into a wall, invisible but firm. She missed the days when her arms moved like wings. Now they felt heavy, burdened, slower than her heart desired. It wasn't just pain. It was memory, time, and years of carrying, not just weight, but life itself. She remembered the decades of reaching out. For her children, for her work, for others who needed her strength. The shoulders that once held everything now simply asked for care. One afternoon, as the sun bent low over her garden, she sat quietly. The flowers swayed, but she stayed still. Her hand rested gently over her shoulder. It was warm beneath her touch, tired but faithful. She closed her eyes and thought of all the years her body had served her. Every bag carried, every hug given, every chore finished long after the energy had gone. She smiled, faint but true. The ache wasn't just stiffness, it was history. The record of a life fully lived. But deep down, she knew she didn't want that stiffness to define her story. There was more movement left, even in stillness. She wanted to reclaim ease, not youth. Grace, not speed. That evening, she found an old notebook. Inside it, a small line she'd once written to herself. Slow doesn't mean stopping. The words hit differently now. She realized that maybe slowing down could be its own kind of strength. That maybe gentleness was another form of courage. So she decided to start small. Not with weights, not with long routines, but with one quiet promise: to listen to her body, to breathe before she moved, to give her shoulders permission to soften. The next morning she returned to her garden, empty-handed. No watering can, no rush, just her breath, her body, and the open sky. She rolled her shoulders slowly, once forward, once back. The motion felt uncertain, tender but alive. And for the first time in years, she smiled not at the flowers but at herself. Her shoulders ached, yes, but they also responded. A quiet hum beneath her skin, a sign of life returning. She whispered, "We're still here." It wasn't a statement of pride, but of peace. She knew this was the beginning, not of exercise but of rediscovery. The garden rustled softly, as if nodding in agreement. And somewhere between the breath and the stretch, Margaret felt something lift, not the watering can but the weight of years. Her shoulders remembered what freedom felt like. Slow, gentle, alive. The next morning came quiet and clear. Margaret sat by the window, her cup of tea steaming softly beside her. Her shoulders still felt tight, but the ache was less sharp today. She turned her neck slowly, listening to the small creaks that answered back. It wasn't pain anymore, it was a language. Her body was speaking, and for the first time she was ready to listen. She thought about how much her shoulders had done through the years. Lifting groceries, carrying children, reaching high shelves. Even now, they carried more than weight, they carried worry. Worry about her family, her health, the world spinning faster each day. It struck her how much tension could hide inside these small, strong joints. The shoulders were like hinges between strength and surrender. They moved her arms, connected her chest and back, held the rhythm of her days. And yet she had never really thanked them. Never paused to understand how they worked or how they whispered for rest. She took another sip of tea, letting the warmth travel through her chest. Maybe this was the lesson age was offering, to pay attention. Not just to the big things, but to the small, silent ones. The parts of herself that had given without asking. She set her cup down and let her fingertips trace her collarbone. Beneath the skin, she could feel the pulse of life. She imagined her shoulder as a bridge, delicate but strong. A bridge that connected her arms to her heart. When that bridge tightened, everything above and below it followed. The neck grew stiff, the back heavy, the breath shallow. She smiled at the thought how simple, and yet how connected it all was. Our bodies, she thought, are maps of our stories. Every joint tells a memory. Every ache holds a message. And the shoulder, perhaps, is where responsibility likes to rest. It carries what the heart cannot always say. It holds what the mind refuses to drop. Margaret took a deep breath. Slow, gentle. She rolled her shoulders again, just like yesterday. This time she noticed more the small stretch behind her back, the release near her neck. It wasn't about pushing or proving. It was about noticing. She imagined her muscles like old friends, stiff at first but waiting to reconnect. She whispered softly, "Thank you," as if the words could seep into her skin. In that simple motion, gratitude became medicine. Her breathing deepened, and she could feel warmth spread across her upper back. The air felt lighter now, softer, as if it too had exhaled. She realized she didn't need to force her way to comfort. She only needed to move with kindness. The shoulder was not a problem to fix, but a part to understand. A reminder that healing is not speed, it's attention. And that every slow circle of the arm, every pause between breaths, was a quiet act of coming home. Margaret smiled again, not because the ache was gone, but because she finally knew what it was asking her to learn. The morning began with silence. Margaret sat on her favorite chair, the one by the window. Outside, the world was slowly waking up, but she stayed still. Her shoulders felt heavy, not from pain, but from years of forgetting to breathe. She had always moved first and breathed later. Today, she decided to reverse that. She placed her hands gently on her knees and closed her eyes. Her breath came shallow at first, uncertain, almost shy. It had been so long since she had truly noticed it. She inhaled slowly through her nose. The air filled her chest, expanded her ribs, and lifted her shoulders ever so slightly. She held it there just for a moment. Then she exhaled, soft and long, through parted lips. Her shoulders dropped, like leaves falling after a long season. She repeated the motion: inhale, hold, exhale. Each breath felt like a quiet wave washing over old tension. Her mind wanted to rush, but her body asked her to stay. There was peace in the pause between breaths. In that stillness, she could hear her heartbeat, steady and patient. It reminded her that she was alive here now, not in yesterday's stiffness or tomorrow's worry. Just this moment, air in, air out. She imagined her breath as light, flowing gently through her shoulders. Each inhale carried warmth. Each exhale carried release. She pictured the air moving through tight corners of her muscles, untying knots made of old effort and hidden stress. Her breath began to deepen naturally, without thought. Her body remembered what calm felt like. Breathing, she realized, was not just survival, it was connection. A bridge between her inner world and the space around her. She whispered softly, "Let go," on every exhale. And with each whisper, her body listened. The tightness eased, the noise of her thoughts grew quiet. Even the ticking clock seemed slower, gentler. Margaret smiled faintly. She hadn't felt this kind of softness in years. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, like the first breeze before dawn. She thought of all the times she'd held her breath, during worry, during effort, during care. Her shoulders had become the place where all those moments stayed. Now, breath by breath, she was setting them free. She inhaled again, deeper this time, letting the air stretch her chest wide. Her spine straightened naturally, her chin lifted. And when she exhaled, it felt like sighing out an entire lifetime of rush. In that moment, breathing became a gift she gave herself. No rules, no counting, just rhythm and release. Margaret opened her eyes and felt the world return, brighter, lighter. Her shoulders were still there, still aging, still hers. But they no longer felt like burdens. They felt like wings, remembering they could still rise. One breath at a time. Margaret stayed seated, her breath calm and steady. She could feel the warmth of life moving through her again. Now it was time to let that breath become movement. Slowly, she lifted her shoulders toward her ears. The motion was simple, but it felt like meeting herself after a long time. She held them there for a second, then let them fall gently. The release brought a quiet sigh of relief. Her body responded with gratitude, almost like it had been waiting for this moment. She rolled her shoulders backward, slow and deliberate. The sound of a soft crack whispered through the silence. It wasn't pain, it was old tension unlocking itself. She moved again, slower this time, tracing the shape of the circle in the air. Her breath followed each movement, flowing like a quiet rhythm beneath her skin. Inhale as the shoulders rose. Exhale as they fell. Each circle felt smoother than the last. The stiffness began to fade, replaced by warmth and ease. Margaret smiled, eyes still closed. Her arms felt lighter, her chest more open. It was as if invisible weights were slipping off her frame. She changed direction now, rolling her shoulders forward. The movement awakened new places, small, forgotten muscles along her back. They stirred like old friends, finally stretching awake. Her fingertips tingled, her spine lengthened, her breath deepened. The slow rhythm carried her inward, into a quiet awareness of every motion. Nothing forced, nothing rushed, just the language of gentle care. She could feel her body, remembering what grace felt like. Not the grace of youth, but of wisdom. The kind that knows strength doesn't need to be loud. She kept moving, slower still. The motion was like drawing circles in water. Every turn rippled softly through her shoulders, chest, and neck. She could almost feel the air itself moving with her. The garden outside swayed, the world in rhythm with her calm. Margaret whispered to herself, "Slow is enough." Her shoulders rolled one last time, smooth and quiet. She paused at the end, resting her hands on her knees again. Her breath was deep, her body warm. There was no ache now, just awareness. Every inhale brought renewal. Every exhale carried something away, worry, pressure, yesterday's weight. She opened her eyes slowly. The light had changed. Morning had ripened into day. The world looked the same, yet somehow softer. Her shoulders felt open, steady, alive. She could reach again, not just outward but inward. It wasn't a workout. It was a conversation between her breath and her body. And in that gentle exchange, she discovered a quiet truth. That healing doesn't arrive in sudden bursts, but in slow circles of care. One roll, one breath, one tender motion at a time. Margaret smiled. Her shoulders had learned to move again, and so had her spirit. When the movement stopped, the room felt quiet again. Margaret stayed still, her hands resting lightly on her thighs. The warmth in her shoulders lingered, soft and alive. She didn't rush to stand or move away. She wanted to feel what remained after motion. The stillness was not empty, it was full. Full of breath, heartbeat, and calm. Her body hummed quietly, like a song only she could hear. It was the sound of blood flowing, of energy returning home. She realized how often she'd missed this part, the after. The space between doing and being. It was here that healing truly lived. She inhaled again, slow and quiet. The air felt lighter now, easier to hold. Her chest expanded, her back lengthened, her neck softened. Her shoulders were no longer tense gates, they were open doors. She could feel her breath moving through them freely. It was as if each inhale polished the inside of her body. Each exhale swept away the dust of old tension. Margaret let her eyes close once more. The garden outside was moving, but she stayed still. Stillness had its own kind of motion, inward, deep, steady. She felt her awareness spreading through her body, inch by inch. Her arms felt longer, her hands lighter. Even her fingertips tingled softly. She noticed the gentle rise and fall of her shoulders with every breath. The rhythm was calm, like the tide at dusk. For years, she had thought movement was about effort. Now she knew it was also about return, coming back to herself. She smiled at that thought, letting it rest quietly in her chest. The world outside could rush as it pleased. She had found her own slower rhythm. Her body had remembered its natural pace. A pace that didn't demand perfection or strength. Just presence. The kind that listens instead of pushes. She could feel the difference, not in the mirror but inside. The stillness after movement was a kind of peace she hadn't known before. Her breath was her anchor now, keeping her steady in this calm. Even the aches felt softer, almost grateful. Her body wasn't fighting her anymore. It was thanking her for finally listening. Margaret placed a hand gently over her heart. She could feel its steady beat under her palm. Each pulse echoed through her shoulders, through every quiet space inside her. She whispered, "This is enough." And she meant it. No big goals, no loud success, just this moment, alive and whole. She stayed there, breathing, resting, being. The air smelled of morning stillness, tea, and soft light. When she finally opened her eyes, she felt renewed. Not younger, not stronger, just lighter. Her shoulders no longer carried the weight of years. They carried the rhythm of peace. Stillness had taught her what motion never could. Sometimes, doing nothing is how you finally begin to heal. The days began to move differently after that morning. Margaret found herself returning to her quiet stretch each dawn. It became more than a habit, it was a small ceremony of care. Each breath, each gentle roll of her shoulders felt like a soft greeting to life. Her body no longer resisted her touch. It welcomed it like earth opening for rain. The stiffness was still there sometimes, but it didn't scare her anymore. It was just a whisper reminding her to slow down. She learned to listen without judgment. To meet her limits not with frustration, but with tenderness. Every slow circle of her shoulders released something deeper. Not just tight muscles, but old memories that had lived there quietly. Moments of worry, years of holding others, seasons of forgetting herself. With every exhale, a little of that weight lifted. Her body was learning to forgive the years of rush and silence. She realized that healing wasn't about fixing, it was about listening. The body speaks softly, she thought. You just have to stop long enough to hear it. Sometimes she stretched with music, soft piano filling the air. Sometimes she stretched in silence, the only rhythm her breath. Either way, it felt sacred, like a conversation between body and soul. Her shoulders, once heavy with tension, now felt lighter, freer. They no longer held pain as a burden, but as a memory of endurance. Margaret began to notice changes beyond her body too. Her thoughts slowed, her patience deepened, her smile came easier. It was as if her shoulders had been holding her emotions for years. Now, with every gentle roll, she was letting them go. One morning, while stretching by the window, she caught her reflection. Her face looked calm, lined but kind. There was softness there, the kind that only comes from acceptance. She lifted her shoulders once more, breathed deeply and exhaled. Her chest opened, her spine lifted, her heart felt light. In that moment, she understood something she hadn't before. The shoulders weren't just part of her body, they were part of her story. They had carried her through every season of life. Through work and worry, through laughter and loss. They had never given up on her, even when she forgot them. She whispered softly, "Thank you," and meant it. It felt like saying goodbye to an old pain and hello to herself again. The garden outside was blooming, light spilling across the leaves. Margaret sat quietly, breathing in the scent of the morning. Her shoulders moved with her breath, rising, falling, peaceful. No strain, no hurry, just rhythm and rest. She knew she couldn't stop time, but she could move with it, gently, gracefully. Every day a little softer, every breath a little freer. And in that simple practice, she found her own kind of youth. Not the youth of years, but of spirit, alive, forgiving, unburdened. Her shoulders, once heavy with time, now carried only light. The sun was setting now, painting the room in gold and quiet. Margaret stood by the window, her breath slow, her body calm. Her shoulders felt open, light, unafraid. The day had passed softly, and so had she, through it, not against it. She realized that healing was never a single moment. It was a collection of small, gentle choices. Each breath, each pause, each stretch was part of the journey. She no longer chased progress. She simply met herself where she was. In stillness, in motion, in the quiet rhythm of living. Her shoulders no longer carried yesterday's weight. They carried peace, breath, and grace. She smiled, feeling warmth bloom across her chest. Outside, the evening air shimmered with soft light. She whispered to herself, "Slow is strong." And the words stayed in the room, glowing like a promise. Every day from now on, she would move this way. With breath, with patience, with kindness. Her shoulders, once burdened by time, now held freedom. And as night gently wrapped around her, Margaret exhaled, finally, completely free.